deep dive. If you were with us last time, you'll remember we looked into, well, the visual side of the veil of the unknown, that strange, shimmering curtain effect.
Right, the way it seems to warp reality itself.
Yeah.
Visually striking.
Exactly. But today, for our second deep dive on the veil, we're shifting focus. We're listening in, you could say, to the auditory component.
Ah, the whispers.
The whispers, yeah. And arguably, they're even more disturbing than the visuals. It's this eerie soundscape that really gets under your skin.
It really does. It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? This shimmering visual silence, and then suddenly you have this barrage of voices speaking languages you don't know.
That's the core question for today, really. What are these whispers? I mean, what do they actually mean? It's such a weird paradox.
How so?
Well, the languages are unidentified, right? Nobody recognizes them. And yet, so many accounts mention they feel resonant, almost like familiar.
Like a half-remembered dream, some say?
Yeah, like that. It doesn't make sense linguistically, but the feeling is there. What does that suggest to you, that sense of recognition?
Well, that feeling, that inherent familiarity, despite no recognizable language.
Yeah.
That's a key anomaly we really need to dig into.
Okay.
It suggests, potentially, that these sounds might be tapping into something very deep, maybe primal levels of perception, bypassing conscious translation altogether.
Wow. Okay. So to try and unravel this auditory mystery, we've gathered quite a collection of sources. Some are pretty chilling, actually.
What have we got?
We've got parts of Dr. Carter's journal. Her personal experiences are quite raw. Then there are historical texts that hint at similar things happening way back.
Right, suggesting it's not just a modern thing.
Exactly. We also have some field recordings, attempts to capture the actual whispers. And maybe the most intense stuff, interviews with survivors, people who encountered the veil and heard the whispers firsthand.
Okay, so each gives a different angle. Carter's personal dread, the historical context, the actual sound data, and then the human psychological impact from survivors.
That's the plan. So our mission today is basically to map this out, look for patterns, anomalies, maybe even signs of intelligence behind these voices.
And offer our listeners a sort of shortcut to understanding this specific, terrifying aspect of the veil.
Precisely. Okay, let's dive in. What do the sources tell us right off the bat? What's the fundamental nature of these sounds? What jumps out?
Well, the first thing, almost universally reported, is the layering. Multiple voices.
Right.
It's often described as a chorus or even a cacophony. Makes it incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to pick out individual words.
Is that maybe deliberate, that overwhelming quality?
Could be. It certainly features heavily in Dr. Carter's audio logs.
Yeah, she talks about the static being everywhere, the voices finding her no matter what. And she says something like, clearer today, so clear I can almost understand them. Almost.
That almost. It's tantalizing.
And incredibly frustrating, I'd imagine. Like the meaning is just out of reach.
It's a key part of the psychological effect, I think. That near comprehension. It could be designed to hold your attention, maybe even make you more suggestible.
Keeps you leaning in, trying to decipher something that might not even follow normal language rules.
Exactly.
Then there are the historical accounts. You mentioned this isn't new.
Not at all. We see descriptions going back centuries that sound strikingly similar. Think about the medieval tales of the call of the silver mist.
Ethereal voices, luring travelers off paths, often towards danger. Yeah, I remember reading about those.
The persistence of that theme suggests a long-term interaction between whatever this phenomenon is and human perception. It cuts across different cultures and eras.
And wasn't there something similar in Japanese folklore, the kurokabe, black walls?
Yes, the kurokabe, often accompanied by unsettling chants or voices. And the chilling detail there is that those who reportedly followed the sounds sometimes saw visions right before they
Vanished. Okay, so that raises a question. Are the whispers just sound? Or can they trigger other things, visions, or even, like you said, physical disappearance?
That link is significant, the auditory leading to visual or physical consequences. It implies the veil's influence might be multi-layered, affecting more than just our hearing. It could warp our whole perception of reality, maybe even our place in it.
Let's bring the black hollow tapes. This feels like our most direct evidence, maybe? Recordings made during an active encounter.
Victor Langston and his team, yes. They went in specifically to document the veil. Their recordings are, well, they're harrowing.
What stands out from their documented experience with the whispers?
What's really striking is the clear progression they recorded. At first, Langston notes faint, layered voices, almost lost in the background noise.
Okay.
But as they got deeper into the veil's area of influence, the whispers grew much stronger, more distinct. And then Langston managed to isolate that specific phrase.
Cross now.
Cross now. That was pivotal.
And he was very clear, wasn't he? It wasn't English, it wasn't any language she knew, but
But as he put it, it feels familiar, like a memory buried deep, which loops right back to that paradox we started with.
the unknown feeling known. How? What could possibly account for that? It's so deeply unsettling.
It could be tapping into something subconscious.
Yeah.
Archetypal patterns, maybe? A level of understanding that exists before conscious language. It suggests communication on a more fundamental level.
Okay, but then Langston's interpretation shifts dramatically.
Right. Initially, he wonders if they're warnings. Maybe about the veil itself, the dangers. Natural assumption.
But his last recorded words, just whispered onto the tape, they're not warnings.
They're instructions.
Chilling. That completely reframes everything. And then, nothing. He and the whole team just vanish.
It lends terrifying weight to his realization, doesn't it? It suggests there might be a consequence to understanding or maybe to following those instructions.
And we don't know what the instructions were beyond cross now, or what crossing now even means in this context.
Precisely. The ambiguity is profound, and a team dedicated to figuring this out disappears right after that breakthrough. It raises serious questions.
Let's shift to a survivor's perspective now, Sarah Klein. Her account gives us this personal, close-up look at how the whispers can escalate and manipulate.
Yes, her experience is incredibly revealing.
What aspects struck you the most?
How it started for her. Just a hum, barely noticeable. Then it gradually intensified, grew louder, until it just took over everything, dominated her hearing.
And the personalization, that's a recurring theme, isn't it?
No.
But for her,
Being called by her full married name,
yeah,
that moves it beyond just random noise or hallucination. It applies awareness, observation.
cognitive awareness, like you said. It knew specifics about her. And the tone shift, that's really manipulative, isn't it?
Absolutely. It started out sounding comforting, almost tailored to what she needed or wanted to hear subconsciously, building trust.
Yeah.
But then it subtly shifts. Starts talking about choices, about sacrifices, about crossing over by letting go of things holding her back.
It sounds like a classic grooming or manipulation tactic. Find a vulnerability, offer comfort, then introduce the demand.
It does fit that pattern. Exploiting vulnerability seems key, luring people closer, perhaps, for some purpose tied to the veil itself.
And the aftermath for Sarah.
Yeah,
The memory gaps, the watch stopping, that feeling of displacement.
and the ongoing auditory hallucinations. That's crucial. It suggests a lasting impact, maybe even a permanent change in her perception, a residual effect.
Plus that final phrase, she remembers them saying, "You'll come back when you're ready."
That carries such a chilling sense of inevitability, as if the encounter wasn't random, but just the start of something, a process she's now part of with a predetermined outcome, like she's been marked.
So if we put all this together, Carter's dread, the historical echoes, Langston's final realization on the tapes, Sarah Klein's terrifying personal ordeal, what are the main theories about what these whispers are actually for? What's the intent?
Well, a few key hypotheses keep coming up based on the evidence. One is the testing hypothesis.
Testing. Testing what?
Maybe psychological resilience, or your capacity for belief, maybe even your willingness to engage with something totally unknown, like a screening process.
Screening for what, though? For whatever lies beyond the veil.
Possibly. Then there's the manipulation hypothesis, which Sarah's story strongly supports.
Right, exploiting fears, desires.
Using vulnerabilities to lure individuals closer, perhaps for reasons that is still unclear but seem inherently dangerous.
Okay. And the third main one.
The communication hypothesis. The idea that these whispers, however alien they sound to us, are actual attempts to communicate, to bridge some kind of gap, maybe between dimensions.
Using language as the tool, even if it's a language we can't understand.
Exactly. And this one, while maybe the most speculative, asks the biggest questions. If it is communication, what's being said? By who or what?
Is there any evidence for that one, beyond just the feeling of resonance?
Well, some researchers analyzing the recordings, like the Black Hollow tapes, have noted a structured quality to the unknown languages. It's not just random babble. There seems to be syntax, patterns,
Yeah.
even if we can't crack the code. So that lends it some weight.
Interesting. But regardless of which theory, or maybe some mix of them is right, the one thing that's undeniable across all sources is the impact.
Profoundly impactful and often terrifying. They seem to bypass our rational minds somehow.
Tap into something deeper, more primal.
They leave an indelible mark, as some sources put it. Whether it's the immediate terror, the lingering anxiety and paranoia, or those lasting effects like Sarah Klein's hallucinations, it's clearly not something you just shrug off.
Yeah, definitely not. So as we wrap up this second deep dive, focusing on this auditory terror, we're left circling back to Victor Langston's last words.
They're not warnings, they're instructions.
Exactly. And when you pair that with Sarah Klein being told you'll come back when you're ready, it forces a really disturbing question, doesn't it? Building right on Langston's thought. If they are instructions, what are they instructing people to do? And maybe even more unsettling, thinking about Sarah being expected back. What happens to those who actually obey?
What awaits them if they cross now or come back when ready?
Yeah, it's a heavy thought to end on, something that definitely lingers long after we stop talking about the whispers themselves.